You are listening to the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Magnify Maggie. This podcast will turn your perception of going sober upside down. We're going to be working from the inside out to get you that dream life. So make sure you stick around for the end of the episode where I'm going to walk you through our weekly positive pursuit exercise to begin rewiring that beautiful mind, baby. What is up? We are back, my free and powerful friend. How the heck are you? It's the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Maggie Jensen, aka Magnify Maggie. And I wanted to start off this episode. It occurred to me that I had never really told you why I open with, hey, what's up, free and powerful friend? Like, why is she saying that? And so today I wanted to kind of discuss the reasoning behind that. Shout out to magnifiers and all of my beautiful friends that have joined the Magnify community or worked with me one-on-one. You know that I call you my free and powerful friend because we are banishing the identity of alcoholic, problematic drinker, somebody who sucks at drinking. If you've ever been courageous enough or maybe forced into an AA room, you know that you have to identify yourself as your coping mechanism. Hello, I'm Maggie and I'm an alcoholic. Whereas my vision with Magnify eventually is rooms full of people ready to talk about high vibe things to starve the darkness and feed the light. And when they get up to share their stories, maybe even share their struggles and get support, instead of identifying themselves as an alcoholic, they stand up, chest out, chin up, and they say, hi, I'm Maggie, I'm free and powerful. Maybe even plugging in some gratitudes or some other really strong adjectives that we use to redefine ourselves nowadays. You know, the terms that I use, like, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm healthy, fit, and free. I'm magnetic, I'm gregarious, all of these things that I would have never thought about myself back when I was struggling with my addictive behavior. So with that being said, I want you to take that to heart and really let it marinate. What types of words do you want to be identified as? What is your new character, your new identity that you are going to harness moving forward? And that is today's topic, being able to move forward without the luggage of the past, literally leaving the past in the past and never projecting it, even subconsciously, into our current experiences or the future. Today's episode really did spawn from a listener request. This listener reached out and said, I love what you're talking about. I love the way that you talk about addiction, how it's not a disease, the mindset around it, but I'm still struggling with my past. I'm still unable to let go. I struggle with embarrassment, regret, and shame. And those were the three words that really popped out to me. And as I read it, I was like, is this an old version of me writing in? Because it definitely felt like that. So today we're going to talk about, I think, one of the most powerful life lessons, whether you struggle with alcohol or not. You probably carry around a lot of past pain. And if it's not alcohol that you're using to cope with these things, you're probably going to find some other tool. And so I think it's important for every human being to recognize what parts of their past are they unintentionally or maybe just conditioned to bring into the current state. Now, here's the first point that I think is really helpful to lay out. If you struggle with your past and creating a new identity, it's because you are still holding on to that old identity. You're still considering yourself as somebody who might be weak, might be futile, meaning that when you go to do things, there's really no point because you can't create a better outcome. Your self-image might be one of, I will never be happy, no matter how hard I try. I know for me, I used to look at my past and say, well, I must be damaged if this is the way my life has played out. I was born to a mother who would struggle with alcoholism her entire life. I would be a child of an alcoholic in that environment. I would lose my brother to suicide, being home alone with him. and struggle with the guilt and the shame of not watching after him, not being with him. All of these past tumultuous experiences filled my suitcase up real full to the point that I was lugging around the past every single present moment that I had in my life. And that was an identity and a self-image that I was carrying with me. If I feel excited about something, I'm the type of person that it will be ripped out of my clutches. I'm the type of person that might do good for a little while, but then the world will come crashing down against me. I might be doing good at some point, but eventually I'm going to get the short end of the straw, short end of the stick, however that phrase is. And that really was my belief. So you can imagine how you operate day to day, going from this self-image and this perspective of fear, self-loathing, doubt. And in every decision that I made, I was letting my past memories fuel that decision making. So I wasn't willing to bet on myself. I wasn't willing to try new things. I wasn't willing to step outside of my comfort zone, to become somebody different, to literally do something different with my life. And in that case, my past was holding me as a prisoner without me even really recognizing that mentally. And that's what was really scary. When I started to recognize that I am making all of my daily decisions off of my past failures and using that as evidence as to why I could never succeed, it was terrifying to realize that I was doing that to myself. But in that moment of terror and even shame and embarrassment, like that listener submitted in that message, it was this aha of, if I did this to myself and I let those circumstances create this outcome, that means that through different action taking, through different thinking, I can actually create really great future experiences. But, and I will say this is much easier said than done, in order to do that, I have to draw a line in the sand and decide I am a new person now. In fact, a lot of spiritual leaders will give lectures on this. You can check this out on YouTube. They will give lectures around every moment is a moment that you can say, I am a brand new person. Anything in my past was just a lesson, just something that happened. And right now, here I am going to do different. But your emotions will get a hold of you. Your fear, again, that doubt, the worry. You'll say, oh, I want to go to this party and I want to socialize and have fun and not drink. Okay. Crap, last time I did that, I ended up taking sneaky shots and I was never able to succeed. So I guess, well, I'm not going to be able to go have fun at that party. That is a projection of the past. And you might think that you're being very logical in looking at your past behavior, but you can decide to say, okay, that was the past. What can I learn from that in order to make this next party scenario really fun? This is shout out to my sound engineer today. It's his 21st birthday, Rick. He's going out tonight and we're maybe priming him up for some healthy mindsets here to celebrate. But when you go into these experiences and you project your past failures onto them, you can almost guarantee that that is exactly what will happen. So how do you decide to take lessons from the past? Well, I just use a very kind of lighthearted example, maybe not lighthearted, the term correct there, but kind of a more surface level example of going to a party and having looked at your past experiences, all of them being quote unquote failures, caving into drink when you said you wouldn't. But I want to kind of extrapolate this out to bigger circumstances of really explaining and articulating how things in our past, it's not about what happened to us, but how we feel about what happened to us. So I want to say that again. It's not about what happens to us, but how we feel about what happens to us. And this concept really helps you change the way you feel about your past experiences. You can say, okay, I'm giving myself a sense of pressure and shame and doubt because X, Y, and Z. So with that concept kind of outlined and in mind, let's go back. Go back to a rather tough subject, talking a little bit more about my brother Eric, who passed away. I was 12. He was 14. At that time, my mom had already been in and out of outpatient treatment centers before, been going to AA for about 7 years at that point, really, quote unquote, trying all of the things, right? But identifying as an alcoholic, having a lot of shame and guilt around her drinking. When my brother passed away, again, he was kind of her enabler. He was very much her star child, her golden child. When he passed away, my mom made that about her inability to be a good mother. And she lived the remainder of her life in guilt, and she carried that baggage around with her forever. And I can't speak from experience of losing a child, but I can speak from losing a brother and watching what happens to your parents. I remember moving in with my dad, and around age 13, 14, he started buying me a lot of books. He started buying me a lot of Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And one of them was Chicken Soup for the Young Soul, and it was about grief and loss. And in this book, there was a story. There was a story about a young man, and I believe his name was Mike. And Mike had taken his life in his yellow Mustang. And his mother decided to create the Yellow Ribbon Society in honor of Mike, because she didn't want any other mother to experience the loss of a child to suicide. It was a suicide prevention foundation, the Yellow Ribbon Society. And I remember reading that story and thinking, why couldn't my mom do that? Why couldn't my mom take the same experience of losing a son to suicide and make it mean that she can help other people? Where was it that this woman found the strength and the ability to say, this is not going to consume me in a negative avenue, but rather this is something that's going to give my life purpose and meaning and fulfillment to help others? My mom didn't have that strength or that conditioning or that self-image of, I can take this negative experience and make it a positive one. And I'm not saying that it's as easy as clicking your fingers, or that Mike's mother didn't have a very difficult time. But in my 13, 14-year-old mind, it started to really permeate that it's not just what happens to us, but what happens inside of us. And our past will continue to haunt us if we can't find a positive meaning around it. I used to struggle with making meaning out of Eric's death. In fact, my mom's third husband told her and I, being a Catholic, he said, I will pray for your brother's soul to be released from hell because he took his own life. And at that young age, and for my mom in her active addiction, that absolutely caused us internal turmoil for years and years that I had to work through. I had to find a better meaning for Eric's death. And going back to my dad, he was able to help me with that. He said, one day I was about 15 or 16, he sat me down on my bed and he said, you know, Maggie, I've thought a lot about this. What if Eric was just sent here to protect you because you have a bigger purpose in life, because you're meant to make a difference in this world? And you had Eric, who was 2 years older than you, protecting you when I was deployed, protecting you from the fights in the house, taking on the brunt of your mother's alcoholism. You had him to protect you. And the semester before my brother took his life, I had moved in with my dad, and I was safe. And I had a strong male role model. I had a beautiful stepmother teaching me womanly things, and I was finally in a safe environment. And maybe that was the reason that Eric's duties were done and he needed to be called up to heaven. And these types of stories that my dad shared with me helped me see. Now, I'm not going to say that they kept me from drinking, because they did not. But over time, as I look back, I'm able to really anchor into these stories, these belief systems around my past that make it possible for me to wake up and not identify as Eric's little sister, the girl that found him dead. The alcoholic Robin's daughter, who ended up becoming a drunk herself. Those were all of those pieces of the past that I was literally dragging around with me in every experience, which led me to want to escape my life. And when I could look back and I could say, I see that these happened for a reason, I become incredibly thankful for them. Now, I might be able to say that, hey, this story, it still has some bad meaning, but I can sit with it long enough to create good out of it. It is not what happens to you, but how you feel about what happens to you. Do you make it mean that you're a failure? Do you make any perceived negative experience mean that you are destined for failure? Do you make it mean that you are never going to be good enough, that you're always going to be useless, helpless, loveless, that you are unlovable? These are some of the most deep core wounds that our belief systems can be whittled down to. Lack of self-love, lack of self-compassion, thinking that we are failures, and we make meaning out of every experience from our past. So in order to let go of it, you need to have a solid new identity, and you need to understand what you're making your past mean about you, how you feel about those things. And you can absolutely shift that story and shift that belief. I don't know for a fact that that's why Eric was put on this earth, to protect me. In fact, when my dad first told me that, I thought, wow, that's pretty narcissistic if I think that. But then I realized that my inability to believe in that was a lack of self-esteem. I said, oh, who am I to have a purpose in this world? Who am I to actually think that I could change the world? You can change the world if you want to, if you decide. And you can change your life if you decide to do so. It has nothing to do with your past. In fact, one of the things that I have gotten the most motivated by is looking at my past, and instead of saying, those are all of the reasons why I deserve pain and anguish and agony in my life, I say, that is all the more reason I deserve strength and happiness and fulfillment and life enrichment, because I've been through hell and I literally knocked on its door and I turned around and came back. And that makes you strong. If you have been through adversity, you have more reason to reach out and grab optimism and positivity and growth and learning. Just because you failed in your past does not mean your future will be full of failure. Your history does not dictate your future unless you say it does. But here is the thing. Our society conditions us to believe that the way to get over our past is to just keep revisiting it. So this is kind of part 2 of today's discussion. I want you to think about what you may have shared or heard or listened to in an AA meeting. You probably recognize that a lot of that conversation was full of complaining about the past, ruminating, dwelling, even if the past was yesterday and it's somebody sharing how they caved into drinking yesterday. Okay, that happened yesterday. Draw the line in the sand. Just revisiting the story on its own does nothing. Same thing with traditional therapy. You go into a therapist office where you are conditioned to believe this is the right place for me if I'm struggling mentally. You go into a therapist office, 9 times out of 10, not every time, but 9 times out of 10, that therapist is going to ask you to drum up past stories, talk about it, but then leave little to no action step or belief shifting strategy at the end of that. You literally go into the room, you talk about your past, and then you're sent on your way, maybe even with medication. What is wrong with that model? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about our physiology and subconscious mind. We're going to bring that in today. When you go into the past and you are drumming up stories that you have made mean negative things about yourself without being prompted to shift that meaning or draw lessons, what you are doing is putting yourself into a low vibrational state, a low emotional state. Our body is a massive energy vibrating at a frequency, and that frequency depends on what our emotional state is. And what we're vibrating at is going to be what we're in harmony with, that we either attract to us, or if we are not in harmony with it, we will repel it away from us. So with that in mind, think about how you feel drumming up the past, going into an AA room, and then walking out. Negative vibration. No intelligent action can come from somebody in a negative vibration. Same thing with the traditional therapist that is not giving you strategies or shifting your perceptions and your beliefs about your past. When you go in there and they say, I have so many times that I sat there and I told over and over again about the time that I found my brother, or the time that my mom did this, or the time that my mom did that. And I was never prompted, okay, well, how can you change your perception of that past experience? That was never a thing. It was just, let's talk about it. And that's in an effort to process it. But no, you're just revisiting that same negative mental environment, locking yourself into that low vibration state, and then going out into the world to make unintelligent action and decisions. So I cannot even remember the amount of times that my mom went into an AA meeting. I went right along with her, and the first stop on the way home was the liquor store, because she was not given the right tools to change the meaning of her past. And even if she had to stand up and give a 30-day coin back, it wasn't in her meetings. It wasn't a culture of, okay, what lessons did you learn? It was a culture of, okay, you're starting over because of your mess ups. And that does not fend well for somebody who already struggles with a lack of self-esteem and a lack of self-worth. Same thing with the therapy office. If you're put into that low vibe state and you're sent on your way, and that happens week over week over week, you're going to continue living in that low vibe state and attracting low vibe things into your life. And then you're just going to think, well, this just must mean that this is how my life is supposed to play out. This must mean that my life is meant to be difficult, that there's no hope, that any try that I ever make, any attempt is going to be futile. What's the point? So you have to start understanding that the cure to all of this is not dwelling in the past. It's actually taking your mind completely off the rearview mirror and keeping your eyes focused forward. If your mind revisits the past, you have to be firm with it to say, you're only visiting this memory to find new feelings, to find new perspectives, to find new self-worth and self-esteem. When you start to harness your mental power and you become a mental master, what you'll find is that you become very aware of the thoughts and the images and even the memories that you might be mentally entertaining, because you have now gotten into this high vibe state. You recognize that any thought you entertain is going to set up a frequency in your body, and it's going to start attracting things to you. And you start to say, oh, I'm thinking about this bad memory. I'm thinking about it in a really crappy way. Ooh, I'm starting to feel this sadness take over. Whoa, I don't want to start attracting sad experiences my way. I do not want to start creating this reality for myself right here, right now. Because remember, your mind will create your reality through your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So you start to become a mental master, even in saying, I'm not going to recall on that memory because I haven't figured out how to take a lesson from it and make it a positive yet. So I'm just not even going to dwell there, because I know the moment I start dwelling there, I am going to start creating that reality for myself. And then guess what starts to sound real enticing? escaping with alcohol. So this is a personal decision that you have to make, and you have to be firm with yourself on. I am deciding that my history does not dictate my future. I am not going to allow it anymore. And then in the moments where you catch your mind going in reverse, going back to that time of embarrassment, even if it was yesterday or if it was 30 years ago, if your mind starts to go back there and replay those tapes, you just say, no mind, you are not going to be entertaining that today. With that being said, you have to know what to put your mind on instead. And I've shared this quote before. I think it's really powerful, one of my absolute favorites. In the absence of clearly defined goals, you will become strangely loyal to daily trivia until ultimately you become enslaved by it. And what does that mean? When you do not have clearly defined goals that you love, not just goals that somebody expects you to achieve, goals that are authentic and true to you, when you have clearly defined goals and you know where to focus your mind in the future, it does not have the capacity to keep going in reverse. So many people that struggle with letting go of the past have not yet created something in their future to focus on instead. And I'll kind of draw your attention back to even to episode 1. I learned this. I didn't know how to put a name to it, but I learned this for myself in that very early stage of quarantine in 2020 when I stopped drinking and I started working out. I started working out with progressive overload and I started repeating my workouts. And I found myself at that witching hour, 8 p.m., when I usually would be slugging down the cocktails, saying, oh, I can't wait to see how much I can squat tomorrow. I can't wait to see how much I can deadlift. And it clicked in my mind that I was spending more time, for the first time in my life, I was spending more time thinking about tomorrow than I was thinking about yesterday or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years beforehand. And that to me was this light that stood off in the distance in the future that said, keep focusing on me and you will never have to struggle focusing on the past again. For a lot of the people that I work with, one of the biggest areas that they have to shift is their work environment. And we're going to talk about this in the next episode, but what a lot of people realize when they start to shelve alcohol and work on their self-image, work on their goals, they start to say, I didn't realize how much I hate the 40 hours of work that I devote to my office building, to my employer, to this company that I don't feel fulfilled by. And so there is a lack of an area to place goals if you don't enjoy your job. That's why a lot of times I will talk about career goals, because I think that's something, obviously this is the career goal that drug me out of my trenches. Doing work with clients, showing up here to this podcast, doing our weekly calls with the Sober Experiment or Magnify clients. All of this work is what makes waking up and showing up for life exciting, because I have daily goals, weekly goals, yearly goals. You want to hear something crazy? I'm working on a book. I just started this podcast. These are all goals that sounded silly, absolutely fantastical to me 4 years ago. And now I have them on my chalkboard wall at home, and I'm literally crossing one off at a time. And it feels damn good. And anytime my mind starts to say, oh, but what about going out this weekend and going to the club? You know, I live in Las Vegas, going to Excess, going to Marquee. What about the club? And I'm just like, that would make working on my book on Sunday really boring, like really painful. Like I'm not even going to want to do it. So when you start to create goals that you are freaking lit up about, then the past troubles, pain, anguish, that starts to diminish. And the obsession with escaping your life actually starts to give you a physical yuck reaction, because you're so damn proud and you're so enthusiastic about showing up for what you are mentally visioning. It's almost like you take those memories from the past that are flashing on the screen of your mind. You see yourself hurting, in pain, being embarrassing. You see the people that you perceive as hurting you, the people that left you, all of these things that we hold on to. And when you stop thinking about that and you start visualizing your exciting goals coming to fruition, that's what replaces that bandwidth. You don't have time to ruminate over the past because you are literally daydreaming the shit out of your new life. And you are so excited to show up there rather than projecting those past pains forward. So this is a topic that I want to come back to time and time again because there are a lot more philosophical perspectives. There's a lot of spiritual perspectives. There's also a lot of intellectual, actual cognitive perspectives, more on the body, our DNA, how our serotonin was hardwired in our life. There are other things that factor into your ability to let go of the past. But I think these concepts were the first that I experienced for myself and that I was able to articulate for myself and really grasp and use to change the direction of my thinking on my own. Now, you guys know we have an exercise every week, and this week's exercise is a journal exercise. It's going to be something ongoing. This week, I want you to start with one painful past event, and I want you to look at this painful past event with curiosity and compassion, our two favorite C words here, curiosity and compassion. One common denominator for people that struggle with substance abuse, escaping their life, is that they are very judgmental of themselves. They hold themselves to very high expectations and they judge themselves harshly. So many of the things in your past that you deem as a failure or painful, you can most likely reassess those through lenses of curiosity. Why did I make this mean X, Y, and Z? Do I have to make this mean that I'm a failure? Have other people experienced this and come out successful? Have other people been through this same adversity and come out as a winner? Start to be curious about that. And then compassionate, meaning you stop judging yourself again and you say, if somebody else was in this situation, wouldn't it make sense that they were sad initially? Okay. That's okay. I can make that sadness okay, but I need to stop judging myself for the sadness. What you'll find is that most of your past painful experiences, you judge yourself harshly and you have zero compassion for yourself. Where you would give somebody else compassion and ask good questions to help them get to the bottom of it, you just judge it at face value for yourself and you're extremely harsh on yourself. So start with one painful past event and work with it until you can shift your perspective. Dr. Jordan Peterson said the cure to addiction is radical perspective shifts. You've got to radically change your perspective of your past events and your future potential. And so we're working with the past this week. Be able to draw meaning. Work with this past event until you are able to draw a meaning where you say, I am thankful and grateful that that happened. I am thankful and grateful that my brother was in my life. I am thankful and grateful that I lived a life of a child of an alcoholic because those experiences gave me a purpose here on this earth. And had I not gone through that, I might just be clocking in and clocking out 40 hours a week at some job that I don't care for, pretending that I like my life and not actually being motivated to change my life for the better. So all of these things are things that I've worked on to draw meaning. Now, as you're working through drawing positive meaning, lessons from that one event, I want you to also decide on one goal for the future that excites the shit out of you. Like literally, you're like, this is something that I've always wanted to do, but I prioritized drinking instead, or I wondered what XYZ he or she would think about me, so I never did it. Something that you have shelved in your mind as an ultimate desire, start to just kind of ideate on it this week. Say, what would happen if I dove into that? How would I start getting involved in that? Maybe it's volunteer work. Maybe it is a job promotion. Maybe it's piecing out at your job and starting off on your side hustle that you've been wanting to do. Maybe it's entrepreneurship. Maybe it's mending a relationship or improving a relationship or starting a new sport or hobby. Pick out something. And if you can't come up with one goal, please reach out, because that's an indicator that there is a major lack of self-worth and self-belief, because you will look at everything and you'll say, nah, that won't work for me. That won't work for me. But I can guarantee if you sit with it long enough and you create a space, what's my one goal that excites me, that I can focus on? If you create that blank space, your mind will rush in some answers. And I want you to reject the ideas of, nope, that won't work. I could never. What would they think of me? Just get started. And as you do this, you'll find that your mind is drawn to more and more ways of, how could I start living out this goal? How could I achieve it? And less dwelling in rumination over that past experience. So keep me posted. As always, DM me, comment on YouTube. Let me know how your exercise goes this week. If you're drawing blanks on that one positive goal, I am here for you. Remember, between now and next time, you have the power to think different in order to drink different, or never again, because it all goes down in the mind. Thanks so much. Signing out, I'm Magnify Maggie. See you soon. It means the entire world to me that you have been here with me, letting me share my experiences and hopefully helping open your eyes to a bright, beautiful life ahead of you as well. So if you are loving this show, please subscribe, like, comment, and especially share this with somebody that might be in need. Please help get the word out. Word of mouth is so important, and I know that you're somebody special who can help me in this mission for thinking differently in order to drink differently or never again. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions you want discussed on the podcast. I'm here for it, so I'll talk to you soon. Signing out, Magnify Maggie.